Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're digging into something pretty intriguing. It's the story, the legends, really, around a place called Dung Dung Village.
Ah, yes, Dung Dung. Known for, well, supposed dark magic.
Exactly. Now, we should be clear up front. The source material presents Dung Dung as, fictional.
Right. But the ideas it represents, the fear of curses, the unknown, those are definitely rooted in something real within human culture.
Totally. So let's set the scene. Imagine this place, Dung Dung. Super remote, right?
Yeah.
Tucked away in the mountains, apparently very hard to get to.
Not exactly on the tourist trail.
Not at all. And the stories paint this picture of a community living under a shadow, a curse maybe, where black magic isn't just some hidden secret.
That's part of the everyday fabric.
That's the impression. It seems woven into their lives. It's a really powerful, kind of primal image they paint.
And that isolation itself, it often breeds unique beliefs. When you're cut off, local stories, local explanations, they take on huge importance.
Makes sense. So the root of all this, the origin story in the narrative, it centers on a sorceress, Minda.
Binda, yeah. The tale goes that the villagers accused her of black magic.
Okay.
And they banished her, kicked her out.
Right. But she didn't just leave quietly.
Apparently not. The legend says she cursed the village as she left, promised them nothing but unrest. It's quite the dramatic exit.
Wow. Yeah, that's a classic kind of folktale setup, isn't it? The wronged outcast, the curse.
It really is. That figure, the one pushed out who holds some kind of power, maybe threatening revenge.
Yeah.
It pops up everywhere. It taps into something deep about social rules and, well, the fear of what's outside them.
So, okay, Binda lays this curse. What happens next, according to the story? What's the fallout?
Well, the narrative describes this pattern of strange events starting after she was banished.
Like what?
Things like livestock just dying for no clear reason, fields that should be fertile just failing, ruined,
Right.
And then people getting sick, sudden random illnesses hitting the villagers.
And the villagers connect this directly back to Binda.
Absolutely. The belief described is that her spirit is still there, still haunting the place, actively causing these problems. It's like a closed loop in their minds. Something bad happens, it must be Binda. Which makes sense, right? If you already believe in curses, any unexplained misfortune is probably going to be seen through that lens. It reinforces the belief.
Yeah, it feeds itself.
Exactly. It makes the curse feel even more real in their day-to-day experience. Shows how our beliefs can really shape how we see things, especially ambiguous stuff.
Now, there's one element that sounds particularly vivid. This wishing tree, or the Mivchong tree.
Mivchong tree, yes. That's supposedly a really central spot in the village's whole mystique.
So what happens there? People make wishes.
They do. People apparently go there to ask for good things, luck or prosperity, but it's also where they supposedly go to perform rituals to curse other people, to bring harm.
Whoa, okay, so it's got this dual nature.
Precisely, and they leave things there, right? Offerings, the account mentions locks of hair, little dolls, things like that.
And the idea is?
The belief is that these offerings act as like a focus, and their wish, whether it's good or bad, will actually come true by the next morning.
That's incredibly specific.
Yeah.
Very tangible. Leaving a physical piece, expecting a direct result.
It really is. And that duality you mentioned, the tree being for both help and harm, that's pretty common in belief systems involving magic or power. It's rarely seen as purely good or purely evil.
And the offerings themselves? A physical act to make the intention real, maybe?
Could be. A way to externalize that powerful desire, perhaps even amplify it in their own minds. It makes you think about the psychology of performing a ritual like that.
Definitely. And it's not just the villagers' stories that build this picture. The narrative includes accounts from outsiders too, people who claim they've actually visited Dung Dung.
Ah, the visitor accounts. Always interesting. What do they report?
Well, pretty unsettling stuff, apparently. Things like hearing rustling sounds when there's no wind, no one there.
Okay, creepy.
Yeah. And seeing, fleeting shapes, shadowy figures out of the corner of their eye behind trees.
Standard spooky stuff, but still unnerving if you're actually there.
And maybe the weirdest one. Some people apparently describe suddenly losing consciousness or feeling completely disoriented, almost like they were hypnotized.
That is strange, like some kind of influence. Now, outsider accounts are tricky, aren't they? They might be bringing their own expectations.
True. Expecting spookiness, maybe finding it.
Right. But if multiple separate accounts report similar things, Well, it does make you wonder if something unusual is happening, even if it's not necessarily, Binda's ghost. Perception and suggestion play such a huge role.
And then there's this other layer, the tech stuff.
Ah, the technological anomalies.
Yeah, the story claims that technology just goes haywire in Dun Dung. Mobile phones just shutting down. No signal, maybe, or just dying.
Compass is spinning uselessly.
Exactly. And even vehicles, like cars or bikes, breaking down right as they get to the edge of the village.
That's a fascinating modern twist on the cursed place trope. It's like the village exists outside of or actively rejects our modern world.
Yeah, it taps into that feeling of what happens when the technology we rely on just stops because of something we can't explain.
Symbolically, it emphasizes the village's isolation, its otherness. Practically, if true, it's just plain weird.
Of course, the narrative itself points out, the obvious counter-argument.
To skepticism.
Right, that this is all just superstition, folklore, scary stories passed down and maybe exaggerated over time.
Which is a perfectly rational take.
But then, that's contrasted with these accounts, especially from people who claim they've been there, who insist they felt something, a genuine, oppressive, dark presence.
And that's the core tension, isn't it? The rational explanation versus the deeply felt personal experience. It's why these stories grab us.
Yeah, because even if you lean towards skepticism, the power of that belief for the people involved is undeniable. It shapes their reality.
Absolutely. Whether the curse is objectively real or not, if people believe it, it has real consequences for how they live, how they interpret things, how they interact.
Which really makes you stop and think about the people who actually live in Dun Dung, according to this narrative. What's their daily life like?
Yeah, I wonder. Are they just constantly on edge, looking over their shoulder, interpreting every little thing as a sign of the curse?
What, I mean, not. Maybe they've just sort of adapted, integrated it into their worldview.
It's possible. Humans are incredibly adaptable. Communities develop ways to cope, explanations, rituals, social structures that let them function, even with unusual circumstances.
So what seems terrifying or bizarre to us as outsiders might just be Tuesday for them, albeit a potentially precarious Tuesday.
Kind of, yeah. It could be normalized within their specific context. It highlights how we all build frameworks to understand our world, and sometimes those frameworks look very different from the outside.
Taking a step back from Dung Dum itself, looking at the bigger picture, this whole story, fictional or not, it feels like it plugs right into some really basic human stuff.
Definitely. That deep-seated fear of the unknown, for starters.
Yeah. And anxiety about curses, about forces we can't see or control. And just that fundamental question, are there dark, supernatural things out there?
Exactly. These stories, they let us explore those anxieties safely, in a way. They function as cautionary tales sometimes, maybe reinforcing social boundaries.
They don't mess with sorceresses.
Or, don't stray too far from the norms. But even beyond that, they just reflect our ongoing attempt to make sense of a world that often feels unpredictable and mysterious.
So, hearing this story, this account of Ding Dong, what's your reaction? Does it resonate? Have you ever come across similar tales, stories about places with that kind of dark reputation?
It's certainly compelling, and it leads to that final thought, really. Regardless of whether Dung Dung is real in the literal sense, what does our fascination with stories like this tell us about ourselves? This enduring pull towards the mysterious, towards magic and curses. What does it reveal about how powerful belief itself is, and how much it can shape the way we actually see and experience reality? That's something to really chew on.